Hello beautiful subscribers, it's February 27th here in southeastern Pennsylvania, zone 7A, and this is by far my most important video yet. You are going to learn the biggest mistake I made when I first started planting fruit trees in my orchard 15 years ago. So stay tuned and watch as much of this video as you possibly can because it is extremely important information. This methley Japanese plum tree, which we're going to see later on in the video, is being sold right now at Home Depot, and it is the very first tree to bloom on the entire orchard. It's criminal. They shouldn't be allowed to sell this tree. It only has 250 chill hours. Do not buy the methley plum tree at your local Home Depot and Lowe's if you live in southeastern Pennsylvania. So today we're going to be talking about bloom time, which I think is the single most important thing you need to consider before you pick a fruit tree to plant in your backyard orchard, especially if you're in growing zones that deal with a late frost. Before we actually get to enjoy ripe fruit right from our trees, we have to deal with a lot of problems. We have to deal with deer, squirrels, birds, insects, fungus, disease, voles, raccoons, you name it, and we have to deal with it. But there's one problem that's the hardest to deal with, completely unmanageable, and it is the late frost. Alright, we're tucked up against the building here because every day I go to shoot it seems to be windier than the last. But I promise we're going to look at some trees here in a second. Like I was saying, bloom time is very important. You can find bloom time information on pollination charts. For example, apples, they have 4 different bloom groups. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 being the earliest to bloom and 4 being the latest. Cherries, they have 4 groups also. Earliest to bloom, early to mid bloom, mid to late bloom, and last to bloom. Long story short, we do not want to plant trees in groups 1 and 2 or earliest to bloom or early to mid bloom, because like I said, the one problem that's unmanageable, especially in zone 6 and 7, is the late frost. Okay, so this is a Lapin sweet cherry tree. It falls into the earliest category of earliest to bloom. This tree I should never have planted here in zone 7A because it flowers significantly earlier than the cherries on the other side of the bloom chart. I'm going to zoom in here and we can see how far along the buds are already in February 27th. Alright, if you look carefully at this Lapin's cherry tree, you can see that the buds are already starting to come out, and we could see how far along the tree is already. Okay, instead of the Lapins, you want to plant this black gold cherry tree, which is on the complete opposite end of the bloom chart. If you look here, we have the black gold late blooming. This is the very last sweet cherry to bloom before you get into the pie cherries. But over here is the Lapins, early blooming. And this difference right here could be 7 to 10 days in the springtime where you could avoid the late frost by planting a cherry tree on the other side of the bloom chart. So let me zoom in here and we can see how far along this tree is. Okay, it's hard to tell. I am not that great with cameras. Much better at growing fruit. But if you look carefully, you can see that these flower buds are not even nearly as far along as the Lapins, which is what we want. All right, I'm back hiding from the wind again. So there's going to be some types of fruits that are hard to find, these nice, easy to read bloom charts that Sky Nursery makes for you. For example, apricots and Japanese plums that we're going to look at next. There's not a lot of easy to find information on when one variety is going to bloom compared to another. So instead, we are going to use chill hours. And I believe that chill hours are directly correlated to bloom time. A chill hour is just the amount of time or a measurement that the tree has to stay below 45 degrees for the tree to reproduce properly. So we are going to look at two different apricots with different chill requirements, and we will see how much further along one is than the other. Chill hours are much easier to find online than bloom charts. So you can do a simple Google search and type in early gold apricot, which we're looking for here, and it pulls up right away 350 chill hours. So I should never have planted this apricot. This apricot blooms much earlier than the other apricot, the Chinese Mormon, which has over 700 chill hours. So this was a big mistake. Hopefully you will avoid when you're planting trees in growing zones with a late frost. So let me zoom in here and we can see how far along these buds are compared to the Chinese Mormon, which has over double the amount of chill requirements. All right, so this is the early gold apricot. And you can actually see there's some pink showing. I mean, we're getting fairly along here on the bud development for February 27th. All right, now look at the difference. This is the Chinese Mormon with double the chill requirements. And you could see that the buds aren't nearly as far along. Not even close. So this tree is going to avoid the late frost many more years than the early gold apricot. All right, one last example to hammer this home to you guys. And this one pisses me off the most. This is a Methley plum tree. It has chill requirements of 250 hours. This is the lowest you'll find on the entire orchard. And as you can see, it's the furthest along. The buds are extremely developed, and it's February 27th. This tree, you could go to the Home Depot or Lowe's right now in southeastern Pennsylvania, and they're going to be selling a Methley plum tree. It's criminal. You're only going to get fruit on this tree 50% of the years if you're lucky. More like 30% of the years, because the late frost is going to wipe you out. Instead, we want to plant a superior plum, which has double the chill requirements. I'm going to show you the difference again in the bud development. The superior plum has 500 chill hours and is much further behind the Methley. So don't make this mistake. Do not buy the Methley plum tree if you're in zone 6 and 7. All right, so here's the Methley, and you could see the buds are so far along, and you can even see white tips. This one looks like it's about to open, and it's February 27th. Now let's go look at the superior. Okay, this is the superior plum. It has double the chill hours. Look how tight the buds are compared to the Methley. And there's no color showing. There's no flower petals showing. They haven't even started to open at all. Now this will buy you 7 to 10 days. And that's all you're gonna need sometimes to avoid the late frost. So instead of only getting fruit 30% of the years from the Methley, maybe you get the fruit 60% of the years from the superior. So it makes a big difference. I mean, they're both Japanese plums, so they're both gonna flower earlier than most other fruit trees. But this one trick that I've tried to hammer home this whole video will save you so much headache. So the big mistake I made that you can learn from is not to plant trees from these early groups. I can't stress it enough. The flowers come out too early, and then the late frost damages the flowers, and then you get no fruit a lot of the years, especially in zone 6 and 7. So late frost and freezing temperatures damage the plant cells as the ice crystals freeze and damage the tissue. So, like I was saying earlier, late frost is almost unmanageable. That's why we want to try to avoid it by planting trees on the other end of the bloom chart, or trees with a lot of chill hours. But sometimes it's not going to work, and sometimes you're going to have to try 2 other tactics, which I don't even do it anymore because they're such a pain. But if you must, you can try and wrap them with frost blankets, but this is very hard when you have a lot of trees and the trees are large and you're trying to tarp them or frost blanket them, and then the wind is howling, they rip them all apart, break the branches and break the flower buds anyways, and then you got to take them on, and then you got to take them back off again and on again if you get another one a few days later, and it's completely unmanageable. So I don't even do it anymore. I just roll the dice and hope that Mother Nature's going to give me some fruit. The other way is what commercial orchards will do, and they will apply water as the temperature drops. And what it does is it freezes around the bud and encapsulates it and keeps it at the freezing point and not let it below. Also, there's a heat exchange when the water changes from a liquid state to a solid ice state. Now, this is also completely unmanageable and a complete nightmare because you got to get out there with hoses and sprinklers and nozzle tips, and you got to get timers, and if you have trees on one side of the orchard or house, trees on the other side of the house, you're going to be running hoses, you're going to be up all night because usually the temperature drops below in the middle of the night, and it's also completely nuts. So because of those 2 reasons, it's that much more important to double check the bloom time of your tree before you buy it. Well, hopefully I hammered that home enough, because this is the biggest mistake that I made. I have a lot of trees on the orchard that don't give me fruit 50% of the years because of this. So if you have any questions, please hit me down in that comment section, and like always, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.